afternoon. On behalf of the Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership, I am pleased to present From Heartland to Coast, engaging diverse partners to protect our water, wildlife, and future. My name is Nicole Iadevaia, and I serve as the Research and Outreach Manager for the partnership. The CHNEP, as it's also known, is responsible for working with local, state, and federal governments, as well as community leaders and nonprofits to restore and protect water resources and habitats in our region. Today I will be discussing the program's recent initiatives to expand our outreach, to engage and provide resources for new and underserved partners in our region, thus addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This effort began with strategic planning in 2017 and is ongoing. I'll give a little bit of background on our work to understand the problems, how solutions were built into the planning efforts, and then give you all an update on ongoing work and accomplishments, and share some lessons learned and next steps. We hope that these will prove useful to you all as you undergo similar processes within your organizations. So, who we are. CHNEP is located in Central and Southwest Florida. We were formerly known as the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program, which was founded in 1995 as one of 28 congressionally designated estuaries of national significance. We received special funding and support from US EPA under the Clean Water Act. And most recently, we underwent a name change, a service area expansion, and adopted a new 5-year strategic plan. I'll go into a little bit of detail later about how that applies to our current talk. So you can see here on the inset map where CHNEP is located with relation to the remainder of Florida. You can also see our original program area and then our expansion area, which incorporated the freshwater portion of one of our major rivers. So diving further into specifics on the region, CHNEP encompasses 5,400 square miles in Central and Southwest Florida. We work within 8 estuaries and their watersheds and 4 major river basins. We work with 10 counties and 25 incorporated cities, as well as multiple agencies in the area. Previous program work focused mainly on education and restoration efforts along the coast. In our new plan, we seek to address the disparate needs and access to resources faced by our inland communities. And as you can see here in this map, only 3 of the counties which we serve are actually coastal. But we believe all of these areas are important for watershed scale approach for improving habitat, water quality, and hydrology. So the power of the partnership. This is the how of our work. We take a non-regulatory science and consensus-based approach for our projects. We seek to engage all stakeholders to guide and participate in regional landscape level protection and restoration efforts. The new strategic plan, which was recently adopted, was drafted collectively by and for the partnership and represents a shared vision and specific actions needed to protect water and wildlife in the area while welcoming new partners and starting new initiatives. So diving further into this plan, it's known as the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan. We began drafting it in 2017. At this point, many of our inland communities were not as actively engaged in the CHNEP and had not been for some time. They felt that their distinctive needs were not met by work done to protect water quality downstream and in the estuary. Understanding that these areas are of equal importance in environmental and social terms, the new plan was built with specific actions and activities aimed at equitable allocation of staffing and resources to address these inclusion issues. As mentioned above, the new plan had a watershed scale approach that it took for protection and restoration activities. So the evolution of the CHNEP and its guidance documents now positions the partnership to be even more effective in protecting and restoring our waterways and other critical natural resources, but also to be fair and equitable with the commitment of our time and distribution of our resources. So you can see here the 4 strategic actions that are involved in our plan, which is water quality improvement, hydrological restoration, fish, wildlife, and habitat protection, and public engagement. Rather than creating a separate section for environmental justice, it is actually woven throughout each of these plans and actions. So, how do we identify specific actions to be taken to address environmental justice issues? The program worked to first outline the problem, then they could take steps to draft a plan to address them. So CHNEP serves a diverse population, which brings unique challenges for the program, and introduces new ways which the CHNEP will have to take specific actions to forge shared solutions, where disparate interests and viewpoints are heard and mutually satisfying outcomes are achieved. So you can see here a little bit of an outline of the split in the area. So the varied interests and disparity in access to resources is mostly along the inland versus the coastal side of things. And I just wanted to point out here as well, you'll notice that the inland areas generally have smaller tax rolls and budgets and less staff for environmental restoration and planning efforts. And they also see a lower direct benefit from funding spent on land conservation and restoration efforts in their area. Alternately, the coastal communities have, in general, larger budgets for local governments and environmental initiatives. And what they see is an accumulated benefit from both upstream protection as well as investments in estuary restoration. So the right path forward to serve not only the environment but also the communities that live in this environment will ultimately broaden the base of public support needed for environmental protection for generations to come. So this is a really important avenue to pursue. Now that we have outlined the issues that we need to address, we need to spend the next few slides discussing how far along the path to environmental justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion CHNEP has come, keeping in mind that this is more of a journey than a destination. So building the template to address diversity, equity, and inclusion issues and environmental justice is the next step. So issues were identified. The importance of these issues was discussed at length by the CHNEP Policy Committee, and then they discussed a way to codify this into our guidance documents. So the Policy Committee of the CHNEP met to discuss the plans. The committee is composed of elected leaders from the partnership cities and counties and agency staff and serves as our governing body. Members agreed that we could not fulfill the organization's mission of watershed scale protection without representation from both inland and coastal areas. They agreed drastic steps needed to be taken. This included a name change and a boundary expansion to welcome additional underrepresented counties and cities into the committees. One note here is this decision was not initially embraced by all existing membership, and a lot of the partners that regularly participated in and benefited from the work of the program we had to spend some time to bring them around to understand why this is important. Many felt a place-based connection to the estuary, but not necessarily the watershed. Some even held on to the belief that the estuary was the end point of the watershed and thus more important to protect. Additionally, if you go down this path, you're going to see a potential for difficult conversations, and you'll see a disconnect from some stakeholders who do not initially agree with changes and drastic actions that need to be taken. Securing support from all of these areas and moving forward can take a lot of time, even years. But the outcomes are important and worth the investment of time and resources that they will make the mission stronger in the end. So why did drastic action need to be taken at this stage? We needed to demonstrate, we felt, to the potential new members of our partnership and those that we were trying to welcome back into the fold, our commitment to the process. So inland partners did not connect with the old name. It was very estuary and coast focused. They also had trouble understanding their importance, let alone justifying spending, limited staff hours, and time at our meetings, or contributing funding to the program that did not acknowledge their membership in the organization. By not participating in these ways, the exclusion became cyclical. Their voices were not heard, and their interests could not be represented. So in order to rectify this gap, the governance of the CHNEP decided that a large shift was needed. The first step was the name change. Inland communities do not necessarily connect with the estuary name. They do, however, have a direct connection to the word heartland, as they believe the heartland lakes and waterways are their access to the environment. So the more inclusive name was adopted in 2019, Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership. These symbolic changes are not everything, and boots on the ground are still needed to enact potential changes, but they are an important signal and recognition of the commitment made. Expanding further inland to the top of the river basins also allows the program to strategically drive funding to areas that do not necessarily receive them. And finally, environmental justice actions were incorporated and called out specifically throughout our new guidance documents. So now that we've built the pathways, we needed to move into action. So more recently, Chenep has moved out of the planning stages and has begun initiating some of these new policies. To begin the process, our executive director embarked on a listening tour, traveling to underrepresented areas and engaging them on their local problems and priorities. Information was gathered during this process and fed into creating tailored project and outreach materials for underserved areas. Funding initiatives were started for inland areas to show proof of the power of partnerships. So we tried to drive funding, we tried to find projects in those areas to commit resources to expand their representation. Project materials are now provided in a digestible way to both traditional and coastal stakeholders, as well as the new inland stakeholders, focusing on their individual priority areas of concern. Results for research and restoration projects are provided by county and basin level, distilling major points for each partner. Next up was the recruitment of new members for the governance and citizen stakeholder committees. This process is slow as trust and relationships need to be built. The goal of this is better representation at meetings, which will translate into being present for decisions and funding opportunities. Many new governmental leaders have agreed to serve on the CHNEP Policy Committee, and we see this as a win. The Citizens Advisory Committee was traditionally comprised of a few inland members and many members from coastal groups. Initially, some pushed back against the change and felt that their coastal counties had larger populations and a better connection to the water and environment, and thus needed more representation and resources. It was decided that this coastal heavy committee had to be disbanded and reformed with strict guidelines of equal representation from each county, and members had to reapply, citing specific ways in which they would further the new mission. So now is the fun part where we get to recap some of our initial efforts and successes on our efforts and inclusion in outreach initiatives. So many coastal festivals already have environmental educators and vendors, reaching an already saturated audience. CHNEP has committed staff time to seek out and attend new non-environmental events to engage in outreach. This includes events that are important to inland communities. We have been to several rodeos. We have attended the Swamp Cabbage Festival, the Wildcat Homecoming Community Festivals as well. We had more slated for 2020, and obviously some of those had to be put on hold. Fishing for recreation and for food is an activity that draws people from all walks to the Heartland lakes and streams. CHNEP designed lesson plans and held educational kids fishing clinics at these events, which was designed to stair-step participants into conversations about stewardship and water quality. We distributed grant-funded rods and tackle to those that completed the 30-minute clinic and used our time at these events to meet community leaders. Additionally, we continue to drive small grant funding and scholarships to local groups that are serving the community and furthering the mission of CHNEP. Pictured here, you can see the Hendry County LaBelle Fossil Camp, which they take kids fossiling in the freshwater portions of one of our rivers and talk to them about water quality. Many of these kids participating in this camp would not have been to the harbor or even the coast. Finally, with the help of EPA and Citizens Advisory Committee members, we have begun the process of translating our outreach brochures and pamphlets into Spanish as well. So where to go from here? Lessons learned and next step. Continued efforts will be needed to listen to the inland and underrepresented communities in order to correctly meet their needs. Some of these regions are physically far away, 3 hours or more from the program office, so it is more effort to meet and engage community members in these areas. Additional staff or volunteers will be needed. Another hurdle faced by the program is to continue work to engage new members for the policy and citizens advisory committees and to educate them about their roles. Some dynamic leaders from communities have seen the value of participation in the CHNEP and will help to continue work to create inroads on behalf of the partnership. This will most likely be an ongoing effort. These relationships, again, take years to build and cultivate. It is important that the Citizens Committee has diverse representation, and it is often the outreach arm and education arm that guides community groups to this grant funding provided by CHNEP and also to opportunities for educational resources. CHNEP has not yet achieved an equitable distribution of funding for projects, resources, and materials. This will take years to continue to work to be plugged into the right conversations and to become top of mind for local governments or nonprofits as a go-to partner. While some work has been done to expand outreach in various communities in an effort to level the playing field, this was largely put on hold due to COVID. It's difficult to reach people without being physically present and literally showing up for them. Work will need to be done to make up for lost time when this becomes a possibility again. But for now, outreach is limited to online and printed materials, so staff will need to explore avenues to pursue effective communications in this way. We will also work to establish metrics for our engagement in these communities. So, on that note, water does not adhere to artificial boundaries that are man-made. Instead, it connects us in a shared vision of healthy communities for everyone, with equal access to abundant resources and clean water. So as we continue to evolve our efforts through active presence, prioritization of funding, and incorporating lessons learned as the program adapts to address the needs of all involved, going forward we strive for environmental and economic equity in forging shared solutions where disparate interests and viewpoints are heard and mutually satisfying outcomes are achieved. And with that, I just wanted to thank all of the partners who contributed to the updated Comprehensive and Conservation Management Plan, the Policy Committee members, Citizens Advisory Committee members, as well as our Executive Director, Jennifer Hecker, CHNEP program staff, US EPA, and Schaefer Consulting for their work to help us produce this updated plan. And thank you to you all for participating. Have a great day.